All right, we rolling this Freedom Phil. Like, subscribe. Let's get into it. Hey, turn up the feed. Why do I say that? Because you watch videos faster. If I upload this, you should be watching at least at 1.5. Let's get into it. And as I always say, this is a channel for adults. If you let your kids just watch anything on the internet, you're probably a shitty parent. Yeah, don't blame me. Blame yourself for farming out your kids to the TV screens. Let's get into it. What's my topic today? We used to have a culture that had expectations. No matter what group or strata or class you were from, being classy was the objective. Didn't matter if rich, poor, classy. We are the absolute opposite of that now, at least in America. Shame has been out the window for ages. I think the last generation that had any, or the least era you could see it really emphasized, was probably the 50s and early 60s. But once the boomers got into doing their thing, the world started slowly going another direction. And that's where we get into the concept of the reason the welfare system has failed is because it was designed to help people, as where now people are simply helping themselves to the welfare benefits. And I know a lot of you don't want to hear that, but there's a lot of truth to what I'm going to tell you here. By the way, once again, Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Back in the day, before the welfare system was a normal thing, like before the great expansion of Lyndon B. Johnson, even go further back before Social Security or pensions or whatever you call it, there was this expectation that you would do for yourself. You and your family would work hard to do for yourself. And you see this in second and third world countries where they don't have a huge, backup plan. The backup plan is you have a bunch of kids and those kids help take care of the old people when the old people are old. So basically when your kids are now teenagers, they help take care of Nana because Nana helped take care of them when they were babies so both parents could work. Now, for good or bad, because one could argue that increases populations. But, the problem we have now is we have a system to where the illusion, as long as you paid into the system for X amount of years, and generally most people get far more back than they ever paid into Social Security. And so in that respect, people start having less children. There's less family cohesion, not to mention the divorce situation. It used to be if you came from a broken home, people would talk about you. And I know that's kind of a rude thing for people to do, but maybe there were some good things in that. Like keeping your shit, keeping your petty disputes between you and the wife, you guys keep it together so your kids do better. Like maybe you put a little bit of your ego aside for the betterment of you and your family. Moreover, your family. But no, we went from, trying to build a better world for our children to now everybody's their own little I God complex, where it's basically like me, more for me. Like women telling you need to do what's best for you and the children. Guys basically just being like, well, screw it. If it's not going to work out, at least I'm going to get laid a lot. And oops, I had some kids, Ladies, by the way, you can't even be mad that men are that way. You're the ones giving it up for them. There was a time when, that whole Sinatra era, well-dressed. And yes, people did down low dirty deeds, but they kept it, think about, for all the shit people have talked about Trump, and they kept it pretty quiet for Obama because, I don't know, media do what the media do. Under Bush, they were just totally trashing his family and everything. You remember Robot Chicken? They didn't do that with the Obama daughters, notice. But Bill Clinton, they made a joke out of him getting a BJ in the White House because I didn't touch that. I did not have sexual intercourse. Yeah, white Bill. Sure. But if you go all the way back to Kennedy's, it was well known that politicians had side pieces. It was not a new thing. If you were the leader of a major country, just like a corporation, you had mistresses. But they kept that shit under wraps. She was well taken care of generally. She had a place, her money and whatnot. And it wasn't something we just announced everywhere. We had, even if there was lies, that we kept things classy. Now it's like, look at the difference. A woman used to keep herself and say, I'm not giving this up for just any man. You're going to have to put a ring on it. Now it's like a protest song of women saying, you want this, you got to put a ring on it. Now, meanwhile, they'll tell you that as a guy, but then how many, Chad Thundercocks, the Thundercock brothers, Chad and Tyrone, how many guys have they given it up to? And then when they hit about, late 20s, 30s, well, I want a good guy now. I'm not giving it up for you, even though you've already been fucking bored out by all these other dudes, which then leads to a bad situation for the guys. There is no way that any regular man would have taken on that woman back in the day. But now we got a whole culture that glorifies that. You know, you ever seen like there was the same year that they were complaining about that Christmas carol, Baby, It's Cold Outside, because it sounds like he's coercing her into having sex. It was the same year that there was a song called, basically it was My Pussy, My Pussy. Yeah, this pussy, my pussy. Are you trying to really tell me, like that song from back in the day, okay, at least, okay, for the time it was a little edgy, little raunchy. You know, it was a love song of sorts. Replaced by the modern age of my pussy, my pussy. Women used to look at women that were sluts and they'd call it out. And I'd argue, you know, if you want to talk about ideological subversion of the West, yeah, I think whether it was Russia, China, or whoever, getting our women to basically throw their asses around, guys liked it because they were getting pussy. But then single motherhood is kind of a problem. Well, if these guys would stick around, sometimes the women kick the guys out. Sometimes the women just don't even know who the fucking father is. You look at these type of situations and you look at where we've gone as a society. Once upon a time, it wasn't, you know, if you were a single mother, and I don't think you should be totally shamed. There is cases where a woman, her husband dies at work, her husband died in a war. You know, it wasn't just that, you know, maybe she picked the right guy, something horrible happens. But most of the time, these days, it's just, I was bored. Yeah, he was good until he wasn't good enough, or until someone better came along. And this is now the modern family. To where if you have that normal style situation, we look at it and like, wow, that's really nice. It's like you've got the premium gold plush latinum situation. But at the same token, people are like, well, that's strange. Because we've gotten so used to what is, I'm not even going to be nice, deviant. We've gotten used to a deviant existence. Low class, you know, like, I guess Hank Williams Jr. got his wish. I like my girls on the trashy side. We're there. He sang that, back in the 80s? We're 40 something years later. Hank, we're here. Was that 35, 40 years later? Hank, we're here. We got it. The trashy side. Okay? Now, then you take that same type of trashy behavior that gets paid via the government. And once that class that's long since been completely evacuated out of our culture, even religious people, I'm going to be honest about it, churches have cucked themselves so fucking amazingly. Well, they'll basically be like, they won't call things out like they used to. And the reason is they lose a lot of their members. A lot of women go to church because they love that forgiveness. They're looking for some simp man. A lot of these women have some other dude's kids, but they're looking for some simp man to settle down with. Well, I need a real man now. Imagine for a second there was some fire and brimstone brought back. Do you think those women would stick around with that church? Hell, sometimes the pastor, the priest, the rabbi, the imam, whoever, is fucking some of the ladies. Yeah, everything has been watered down and destroyed. Now, with all the other things in your life, all the morals that used to hold the societies together, the glue of society for thousands of years, basically washed away. Is it any surprise that we have a lot of people on a system that was designed to help people out of poverty? And back when it started, people viewed it that way. They didn't want to be on the system because everybody else around them had their shit together for the most part. Now, they take a goddamn good look around the world and they're like, well, my friend's on the system. I know this other person's on the system. This person's on the system. That person over there, he found some way to scam the U.S. military out of disability money. You know, this other person over there is faking other crazy. You got a whole crowd of people. And this is kind of like what they talk about in countries where you'll have third worlders move to a first world country and they'll bring third world mentalities with them. In the past, when there was only a few of them around, they had to assimilate to the dominant superior society in order to get by. And then they ended up becoming first world. But when you get enough fuck shit people around you that are all the same and all have the same issues, cultural, and fucking problems, you will maintain your broken ass culture. So whether it's some third worlder coming here and scamming our systems, or it's even your own countrymen that once upon a time would have had some class, some dignity, and some other things, have be well put together. I mean, just look at the way people used to dress. I don't care, white, black, what the fuck ever. Go back and look at the way people dressed in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, and notice just how well put together. It's sometimes I think the 70s. You look at the colors, you look at it. People just decided, fuck it. Let's make society look like the vomit we truly wish it to be. You know, after the hippy dippy 60s, man, love and peace, Eastern spirituality without any of the hard stuff. You know, and I don't want to rip off Clary here, but come on, baby, light my fire. He's fucking right about that. After that, we brought in the 70s and the worst colors. Like, look at a refrigerator. Look at rugs from the 70s. It was horrible. It was ugly. Like, the death of the good-looking suit was the leisure suit. And maybe we tried to bring some of that back in the 80s. But no, a lot of the shit in the 80s was like bad tacky mixed with the 50s and the 80s. Just bad. The 90s, it was like okay. We had class somewhere in the mid 60s. We started losing that. Okay, mid to late 60s. Then we had the hippies, and then hangover of the hippies was the disco era of the 70s. Okay, and not to say the music wasn't kind of interesting and good. Some of the psychedelic stuff, some of the disco. Yeah, by the way, interesting music. Early electronic with horns, cool. You know, but about when we had that hangover at the end of disco when AIDS happened, you know, 5 years after, took a chance on me. Basically, 5 years later, AIDS. Just saying. Coincidence? I don't know. Maybe God hated disco. But the music changed, the rock changed, the metal changed. Okay, and that's fine. That's what's going to happen. But we have this slight hangover that was the early 80s. And maybe that was partially just because of the 70s and the recessions of the 70s followed up. I mean, God, if you're going through those recessions, you probably did need to be on some drugs. And by the way, the generation that got away with doing all the drugs, the boomers, coke in the 80s. And then after that hangover in the early 80s, then it was like hair metal, bad looking outfits and rock and roll and heavy metal and cocaine, followed, and then heavy drugs, some of the after effects of Vietnam, opium, heroin, followed up by the 90s, just being kind of the early 90s, like parts of the 90s, the grunge, it was just crappy. The style was crappy. Everything was crappy. There were a few things that looked good. If you were there at the time, you're like, oh yeah, I got some fond memories of chicks that dress this way. Just like with punk rock. If you were there and you see some of these chicks and you're like, oh yeah, that was hot. You know why she was hot? Because she was young and you were young. Any era, if you go into, oh yeah, that was hot back then because we were hot and we didn't have responsibilities and the sex was easy. And then you get into like the late 90s and just the fattening of people, the bitchy loud women, I don't need no man. Into the 2000s, and there was kind of a party culture in the late 90s, early 2000s, and somewhere about slightly before Obama got into office, everything, it was like nagging, no offense to women, but feminist women, taking over the colleges, falsely accusing a lot of guys. By the way, part of the reason a lot of guys stopped going to college was they're like, it used to be a fun place. People go in here, have a good time, have some sex, hopefully get a good degree, but most of you didn't. Ask the millennials. And then it became an actual risk to go to college. Like, I'm not going to pay this much money to basically potentially be falsely accused. And, is this degree going to get me a job? So the Zoomers definitely aren't doing that. But you start to look at just the downgrade of that and the party culture completely dying off. And you see this in you talk to people from other cultures like, where's the dancing? Where's the good times? Where's the thin women? Because the thin women are the gasoline, the fuel. Did not come up with that. That was Cleary too. The gasoline, I give credit where it's due. The gasoline that fuels those machines of men. And no, we don't have that. We have now getting into, after the aughts, into the teens, 2000 teens, this like, you need to accept a fat bitch. What? And then today, after all the transing, all the crap, all the BS, trying to, hey, your kids might be this. We don't know. We're not sure what a woman is. We're fighting for women's rights and we can't even identify what it is. We now have this fucking dumpster fire of shit that's everywhere. It's like car tires and shit burning, you know? The class we once had long since gone. And you wonder why there's a lot of people that, they check out, they stop working, they stop doing, they stop producing. What's there to be excited for? So I do kind of understand when some people just look at the scam living on the system, like the system that was designed to help people out of poverty now becomes the hammock, and it becomes how much can you get out of this system? But I think it all comes back down to we have no class. If women get rewarded 24/7 for throwing their ass around, you want to know why you could tell that women get rewarded for basically just showing up? Like, you don't even have to be good looking, you just show up. Go look at the way the dating apps work. Go look at the numbers on that. Less than 0.5% of most men's swipes equal even in an interaction. And for all you know, that might be a robot. Do you think that the modern men have the inspiration to storm the beaches of Normandy with that type of interaction? Meanwhile, the women are basically being carted off, completely smiling gleefully to be part of Chad and Tyrone. What's the Grandmaster Chad and Tyronius Maximus, the Thundercock brothers, part of their harem. I'm just saying. Like, this is the world we live in, and then people have the nerve to be like, why aren't these kids working? Well, what inspiration do these young men have? Is there a better life after you do all the work? No, there's more taxes. Is there a good-looking woman that'll, if you treat her right your whole life, you'll be married your whole life and you'll have a couple kids and a normal house? Nope, that's gone. Why would any thinking individual invest in this? And it really does explain. We went from class to now, I like my girls on the trashy side, was basically almost like a crystal ball radio prediction to where we are now. And so, yeah. I just think it's kind of funny because they're like, let me put it like this. The generation, the millennials, the Gen Xers, and the boomers, the generations that got the best existence. Admittedly, the millennials kind of got fucked, but they did it mostly to themselves. These people are now looking into the future and they're like, well, who's gonna keep the roads working? Who's gonna keep things going? And you're like, these kids are looking back at you and going, you didn't do your part. You guys just did barely enough. And then you put the rest on credit for us to pay. Why the fuck would we pay your bills? And that's where you look at it. And that's where you kind of understand. In a classless, shameless society, it's not a surprise that you got a lot of people that look at the welfare system that's there to be helping you out of this hole. You turn that safety net into a hammock, and you turn that hole into a hobbit house. But that's how we got to where we're at. And whether it's some of it was ideological subversion from other countries, some of it was just frankly, hey, women wanted a fair shake at things and they get out there. What's funny is women always say, we want to be treated equal. No, you don't. No, you don't. You still want the man to pay for the date. And this is what's kind of crazy. And I think ladies, to be honest, if you want a bunch of these guys to actually go out there and really do for you, you got to put out occasionally. Because one thing I could say a lot of guys have got hip to, because the internet be the internet, because it's not just women using social media apparently, is that a dude being your dinner date, oh, thank you, you're nice, a little peck on the cheek, if that, or, being tepid the whole time while he paid for like anywhere from $100 to $200 for a date, and then you end up being part of Chad or Tyrone's harem. And you give that call, hey, I'm lonely tonight. You're still getting plowed out. But the guys that actually would take care of you, you don't take care of them. So, like that road off in the distance, that freeway, who the fuck is going to rebuild that? Who's going to keep that going? And for the few people that actually keep it going, you're going to have to pay a lot more to get them out there. Because back in the day when there was a lot of people that were willing to take that job, hot sun, breathing in asphalt chemicals, and all that shit, everything is going to get worse. It's got to get worse. And we're gonna be here to enjoy it. And me as a guy who, whether I'm driving truck and living in a truck or living in a van, I am not affected by this crumbling of the world for the most part. I can live off almost nothing. But the rest of you're going to be the ones that are feeling the pain. So you either adapt to the new world or you fix the world for the future. But I can bet, just like part of the reason I'm moving off my wonderful hill here, You know, and you're like, why are you moving off the hill? There's some old people, they'll show up at the bottom of the hill and they won't bother to drive up the hill before they start shooting their guns. And then the ricochets that hit the rocks go flying over my camp. Nothing's ever got hit, but I ain't sticking around. After when I go to reload supplies on Monday, I got a new spot closer to the river to be like, why didn't you just go down there before? I really love this view. I mean, God, look at it. Look at it. This is fucking amazing. And I can walk down the mountain, then across the road, and then across the hill, then down the wash again to get to the water. Well, fuck it. I'm going to be closer. I'm going to be at a place that needs a little repairs. You know, like it needs a little bit of cleaning up. I'll go clean that place up and be closer to the water than risk getting, maybe possibly, a ricochet that goes through my van or me. And what's the story with that? I can count on people's sloth. I can count on people's optimistic laziness. In the same way, I can count on most people just putting their hands in the air and being like, fuck it. Whatever happens, happens, man. So let's enjoy the decline. If you know what book I'm talking about there, put it in the comments. Peace. By the way, like and subscribe. By the way, if you listen to this video after it uploads at regular speed, what the hell are you doing with your life? We call this channel Turn Up the Video Speed for a goddamn good reason. I watch most videos at 250 on YouTube. Unless you're paying a higher price, you can pay up to 2 times the speed. At least 1.75 people. It's part of the reason I convert a lot of videos to MP3s, especially the long ones, where it's like, I got a 6-hour video or a 2-hour podcast. I don't need to sit there and listen to it at regular speed. Yeah, take it easy. Like, subscribe. Peace.